Welcome. Today, we will take a short look at 3 horrifying stories I discovered on Reddit. The city of Daegu was just waking up. Street vendors were setting up. Students shuffled to catch buses, and office workers sipped coffee on their way to downtown. Among them, Kim Dae-han, a 56-year-old former taxi driver, boarded train 1079, a man carrying grief, pain, and anger. He clutched 2 green milk cartons filled with flammable liquid, an ordinary object masking a terrifying intent. Kim had suffered a stroke in November 2001 that left him partly paralyzed. He was dissatisfied with his medical treatment and had expressed sentiments of violence and depression. He later told police he wanted to kill himself, but wanted to do so in a crowded place rather than alone. As train 1079 pulled out of Banwaldang station, Kim fumbled nervously with the cartons and a lighter. Panic rippled through the nearby passengers. Some tried to stop him. In the struggle, 1 carton spilled, and the liquid caught fire. Within seconds, flames licked across the floors and seats, feeding on plastic, vinyl, and insulation. Thick black smoke began curling toward the ceiling, and the air filled with a burning chemical smell. Passengers shouted, scrambled, and stumbled toward the doors. Some grabbed friends' hands. Others frantically dialed loved ones on their mobile phones. The train screeched into Junggangno Station, where the smoke spilled into the underground corridors. Train 1080, arriving just minutes later, stopped alongside the blazing 1079. The operator, following protocol, hesitated. Doors opened briefly, then shut to keep the smoke out. But when he finally fled, he removed the master key, inadvertently cutting power to the train doors. Trapped inside, 79 passengers couldn't escape. Emergency systems failed in other ways. Fire extinguishers didn't exist on these trains. Sprinklers were absent, and lighting flickered or went out entirely. Smoke poured into the station, turning familiar hallways into dark mazes. People called out for help, voices muffled in the thick, acrid haze. By the time rescuers arrived, many had already perished. 192 lives were lost. Most victims students or young workers commuting to the downtown shops that opened at 10:30 a.m. Families held their phones to hear their loved ones' final words. Others simply disappeared in the smoke. Identification was painstaking. DNA testing became the only way to recognize some of the victims. The fire sparked outrage across South Korea. Officials promised reforms, fire-resistant coatings for train interiors, improved evacuation procedures, and emergency lighting in every station. 6 stations were closed for upgrades, and the tragedy remained a stark reminder of what can go wrong when preparation meets human error. The operators of the trains and Kim Dae-han faced legal consequences. Kim, sentenced to life imprisonment, died in 2004. Survivors and families sought closure, and in 2008, the Daegu Safety Theme Park opened, teaching citizens how to respond to emergencies and commemorating those who had died. Today, the Daegu Subway Fire lingers in memory, not just as numbers or headlines, but in the stories of ordinary people, commuters laughing on their way to work, students texting friends, families waiting at home. A single act of violence, compounded by small failures and overlooked safety measures, turned a normal morning into a tragedy that would haunt a city forever.
Take your motherfucking ass over there, stand in line, wait for our train.
The lives of Naeem Davis and Kisu Khan were as far apart from each other as the distances of the places they were born. One escaped war-torn Sierra Leone as a child. The other came to New York City from South Korea to pursue an education. One wandered indigently around Times Square, sometimes doing odd jobs. The other was an out-of-work married father, looking for a job. But their lives collided on a subway platform in Midtown Manhattan on Monday afternoon, when Davis pushed Han to his death in front of an oncoming train. Davis, who was 30, grew up in New Brighton, raised as a foster son by a couple who took in several special needs children. He immigrated to the United States at age 7 after being wounded in a mortar attack during Sierra Leone's brutal civil war. Records show he had a history of petty crimes dating back to 2001, when he was arrested for stealing laptops and served 1 year's probation. In New York, he has had several charges against him, ranging from peddling t-shirts without a license to a marijuana arrest. Han, 58, was born in South Korea and came to the United States in 1987. He met his wife, Sarim, also a Korean immigrant, in the U.S. The couple lived in an apartment in Queens. Their daughter, Ashley, was a 20-year-old college student. Han worked at a dry cleaner's in Manhattan, but lost his job due to the economy, and for several years struggled to make ends meet. His wife said the two quarreled before he left their home on that fatal Monday morning. The two had an altercation in the 49th Street subway station when Davis pushed Han onto the tracks, where he struggled in vain to avoid an oncoming train which crushed him. Witness accounts, as reported in the media, tell varying stories of the incident. Some say Han was defending other people on the subway platform from a deranged homeless person. Others say Han was intoxicated and was the aggressor. Authorities say a bottle of vodka was found on his person, which was corroborated by his wife, who said he had been drinking. After a 3-week trial, testimony from more than 30 witnesses, and 4 days of deliberations, a Manhattan jury found Mr. Davis not guilty of all charges. It was determined that he was acting out of self-defense while being harassed by Mr. Han. On November 18, 1993, Angie Housman disappeared on her way home from school. She was a 4th grader who lived in St. Anne, a quiet suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. She was last seen departing the school bus at her normal bus stop, just 8 houses down from her home. After 9 days, her frail body was found tied to a tree by a deer hunter in a remote area. It is believed she was alive when she was left there, and she had died slowly of exposure. A small pile of ice chips had formed over her body. Later, analysis revealed that her abductor had kept her alive a full week, torturing and before tying her to the tree and leaving her to die. Law enforcement officials stated they had the killer's fingerprint from duct tape found at the crime scene and his DNA. However, no arrests have been made and no suspects announced. A sketch of a bearded man in a long coat, thought to have been seen in the area of Angie's disappearance, was reported 2 days prior to her abduction, but nothing ever came of that account. In March 2019, DNA was found on Angie's underwear. The DNA profile was placed into the National DNA Database, and it was matched to 61-year-old Earl Webster Cox, At the time of Angie's murder, he had a family that lived just 3 blocks from her school. Cox had joined the Air Force in 1975, but was dishonorably discharged after he was charged with offenses involving 4 children in Germany. He served 8 years in prison before being paroled. He later moved to Missouri, where he was arrested for abuse. In 1992, he pleaded guilty in 2003 to trying to entice a minor across state lines for activity. He also pleaded guilty to charges of having over 45,000 images of on his computer. In 2012, Cox was labeled a sexually dangerous person and civilly committed indefinitely. On June 5, 2019, after his DNA was matched to the profile found on Angie's underwear, he was charged with murder, assault, and kidnapping. Earl Cox was sentenced to life without parole in 2020 over the death of Angie Housman in 1993. A plea deal spared him from the death penalty. In December last year, he died in prison. Thank you for your attention.